Senator Cornyn, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We saw those photos of Trevor Reed back here in Texas now. What does this moment represent to you?
Well, it's been a long haul for Trevor, who's been incarcerated for about 1,000 days on trumped up charges. But unfortunately, when you travel to Russia, you have to realize that they don't have a legal system like we do, with a Bill of Rights and with an independent judiciary. So unfortunately, he was detained. He was appealed. His case was appealed, but rubber stamped by higher courts. But this is a great day for not only Trevor, but for his parents, who worked tirelessly and who never gave up hope. We worked with them to try to make sure they got in front of people like President Biden, which they did finally. And I think President Biden was moved by the experience and ultimately consummated this transaction, one Russian prisoner for Trevor Reed. But obviously, this was not done out of a sense of compassion or justice. This is purely a transaction, and Putin was holding Trevor hostage until such time as he was able to get something, use that leverage to trade for something he wanted.
Have you had a chance yet to speak to either Trevor or his family?
I talked to Trevor's mom and dad this morning, and we celebrated over the telephone. But I did see a video of him when he landed, and Congressman Pfluger from Midland was there to greet him. Another member of Congress who's worked to try to maintain the visibility of this unjust detention and to try to get Trevor home. But you can imagine, after you've been incarcerated for about 1,000 days during a pandemic and kept in rather tough conditions, that it's going to be a while for Trevor to transition back to some sense of normalcy. In the meantime, we're working to make sure that every resource that Trevor needs to get back to a normal life is available to him. But you can imagine this is a very traumatic experience.
Two other Americans, Paul Whelan and Brittany Griner, are still being detained in Russia right now. What do you think should be done to ensure that their release happens just as Trevor's was?
Well, first of all, Russia needs to maintain, allow access to both of them by our embassy. I talked this morning in Moscow with Ambassador John Sullivan, who's serving there, who visited Trevor regularly, although not as often as he would have liked, and who is now monitoring the conditions under which Ms. Griner and Mr. Whelan are being detained. But we'll continue to advocate, just as we did for Trevor, for the release of these two Americans from this Russian prison. But unfortunately, they're just trade bait for Putin. Again, he doesn't enter into these negotiations out of a sense of justice or compassion. He's looking for leverage and something to get for what he gives. But we will continue to advocate, just as we have for Trevor, for the release of Ms. Griner and Mr. Whelan.
What should people read into this exchange about the relationship that the U.S. and Russia have now?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we are currently supplying weapons to Ukraine to repel this unjust invasion by the Russian Federation. Putin is moved, again, not by anything other than his sense of desperation to restore the Russian empire. He called the fall of the Soviet Union one of the greatest geopolitical tragedies in history. So he's going to be looking for leverage. But what we need to do is keep both the case of Ms. Griner and Mr. Whelan front and center, because there's so much going on. It's easy to get distracted. We don't want them to get lost in all of the chaos. And so that's part of my job and the job of other members of Congress, to continue to work with those two individuals and their families to get them released, just like we were able to do with Trevor.
Finally, Senator, do you believe that Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan are both being held unjustly in Russia?
Well, all we know, because Russia is not an open society, there is no freedom of the press. All we know is what the Russian government wants us to know. And of course, we've heard the allegations against both of them. But in our country, in any fair system of justice, those allegations must be tested in front of an independent judge and a jury. And of course, that none of that happens in Russia. So I certainly don't trust the Russian government to treat them either with fairness or compassion or justly. And that's why we need to get them back home as soon as we can.
Senator Cornyn, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. It's nice to talk to you, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Thank you very much.